Good day, everyone. My name is Ilya Gzoim, and I am the ICC Ukraine's Vice President of the External Department for Investment and Guarantee Facilitation. I am a finance and investment expert with extensive experience in mobilizing capital, managing international financing instruments, and developing donor funded and guarantee backed solutions for businesses. My work focuses on fostering investment inflows, creating financial mechanisms to support Ukrainian enterprises, and strengthening cooperation between the private sector and international financial institutions. I am also a member of ICC Ukraine's support service team for the Rebuild Ukraine program. Therefore, if I can be of any help to foreign companies or indeed Ukrainian organizations looking to finance Rebuild Ukraine projects, please do not hesitate to contact me. Today, in this presentation, we'll discuss the role of the financial sector in rebuilding Ukraine. This is one of the largest reconstruction efforts in the world. More than $200 billion have already been pledged, and roughly $300 billion more is needed. You will see that there is currently a difference between funds being pledged and actually being made available, which is causing some delays in projects being initiated. However, you will also see that these difficulties are being resolved. Projects are underway, finance is being made available, and this is destined to grow significantly. Our goal today is to show how you can be part of this process. This slide highlights and summarizes the scale of the program. Over 500 billion US dollars estimated to be needed over the next 10 years. The scale of this is difficult to imagine. To try to put this into some kind of context, you will have all seen the terrible destruction that has been inflicted on Gaza. There is hardly a building left standing or undamaged. The scale of rebuilding that is estimated to be required is 70 billion US dollars. I do not mean in any way to trivialize the level of destruction and human suffering in Gaza, but the amount of damage inflicted on Ukraine is more than 7 times of that in Gaza. God willing, the fighting is now stopped in Gaza, but here it most definitely continues, bringing more destruction to our country. Indeed, the Ukrainian Prime Minister has estimated that as much as $1 trillion will be required over the next 14 years to rebuild and modernize Ukraine. This 500 billion estimate over 10 years represents an average of 50 billion per annum. Yet, you will see that this year only a fraction of that has been provided, welcome though that is. You will also see in the presentation on the portal that there are currently about just over 1,200 projects worth $600 to $700 million of projects in the pipeline for approval and financing. Welcome though that is. And from a commercial point of view, these estimates are not trivial. There is still a way to go before the full economic potential of the rebuild program is released. I would say that this relatively smaller beginning is actually a major opportunity for foreign companies to establish themselves now before the much bigger opportunities present themselves, as they surely will. Speaking about projects seeking approval and financing, I think it is worth spending a few words on DREAM. What is it? Why was it created? And what role does it play in channeling financing? DREAM is the central platform for managing Ukraine's reconstruction. The main advantages of DREAM are its transparency, internal digitalized procedures, and the level of information provided on each project. Financed by international institutions, DREAM's transparency and internal procedures were key requirements for the provision of project finance by these same organizations. It serves more than 1,200 communities and all key ministries. Only approved communities and public sector entities are authorized to present rebuild and reconstruction projects for consideration and financing. Once an approved entity has provided all the relevant information regarding their project, the project enters the pending phase, which you will see in the portal in a later presentation. This is the first phase in a project's life cycle. During this pending phase, experts are brought in to help define and refine the project specifications. DREAM is also open to funding institutions, both foreign and Ukrainian, allowing them to decide which projects to which level they are prepared to provide funding. This means that anyone with access to the DREAM platform, and that includes our portal, can also see what the funding situation is with regard to each and every project. To date, it has to be said that only about 9% of registered projects are fully funded. This ratio is largely in line with the value of current projects in the pipeline and the estimated overall rebuild requirements. This shows that there is a huge gap that needs to be funded, but fortunately, this is being addressed. According to the latest assessments, Ukraine needs $524 billion for reconstruction. In 2025, just $7.37 billion has been allocated to priority sectors, leaving a financing gap of almost $10 billion. The biggest needs are in housing, transport, energy, industry, and agriculture. In this context, mobilizing private investors is one of the government's economic goals. But where is all this money to come from? You will note that although multinational institutions are listed here, there is one major world player not present: the United States. There is no doubt that the bulk of the financial burden for supporting Ukraine is now fairly and squarely with European countries supported by Canada, Australia, and Japan. Key donors and sources of finance include the EBRD, which has committed 7.6 billion euros and already invests between 1.5 and 2 billion euros per year. The European Union, which offers 9.3 billion euros in guarantees and potentially 30 billion euros in investments. The World Bank Group, which has mobilized over $78 billion. Frozen Russian assets in the EU and the UK. Interest on these assets have already been provided to Ukraine. The next step is the provision of the capital, close on $300 billion in total. Essentially, European governments have pledged whatever finance Ukraine needs to survive, and that includes rebuilding critical infrastructure. In order to provide the level of funding that is needed, they have a stark choice: increase domestic taxes or find the means to unfreeze Russian assets and deliver them to Ukraine. This is not a difficult decision politically, and it is a decision that has to be made sooner rather than later. The latest estimates are for the end of this year, early January. Along with the extraordinary revenue acceleration mechanism, Russian frozen assets, in other words, there are additional programs providing guarantees, credit lines, and grants that unlock new projects and bring in private investment. You can see some of these here. Guarantees help Ukrainian banks to provide support. There are specific programs aimed not just at the public sector, but also for small and medium enterprises and households, specifically targeted support for infrastructure projects. Then there are a myriad of credit lines available thanks to support from Western export credit agencies, which open up credit lines via foreign contractors. Please bear with me if you are familiar with how export credit agencies function and help open up commercial lines of credit from foreign companies and banks. However, briefly, for those of you who are unfamiliar with these mechanisms, let me explain. To minimize payment risks, letters of credit are issued by Ukrainian banks on behalf of Ukrainian buyers. These are confirmed, that is, guaranteed by foreign banks with the support of their export credit agency. Export credits with export credit agency cover provide between 85 and 100% payment security. The contractor then knows that their home bank is guaranteeing payment, and so can extend credit to the Ukrainian buyer. Conversely, foreign offer the Ukrainian buyer's bank guarantees, such as for bid and performance on behalf of foreign contractors. Therefore, the Ukrainian buyer can be assured that the buyer will perform the contract. Structured payment plans, such as deferred or tranche-based disbursements, help manage cash flows throughout a project. The diagram illustrates the buyer's credit scheme, where the export credit agency guarantees the bank. The bank finances the buyer and the contractor is paid securely. Right? That's the theory. But the question remains: are banks willing to provide finance, and are export credit agencies ready to accept Ukrainian risk? We'll check the current situation on the next two slides. Ukrainian banks are actively partnering with international institutions. Here, for example, the EBRD has given a 185 million euro guarantee to private bank, enabling up to 600 million euros in new loans, and an 89.2 million euro guarantee to Ukrgas Bank, plus an additional 600 million euros from the EIB. Similar facilities are in place for Ukrexim Bank, Oshad Bank, Credit Agricole Ukraine, Bank Lviv, Credo Bank, and Piraeus Bank, all opening significant financing channels for foreign contractors. So that's private sector banks. What about export credit agencies? The good, even excellent news is that many Western export credit agencies have resumed coverage for Ukraine. Some examples are as follows: Austria's Control Bank can guarantee up to 100% for public sector deals. Belgium's Credendo covers up to 95% of commercial and political risks, including war. Canada's EDC offers insurance and guarantees with war risk coverage. Other agencies such as BPI France, Euler Hermes, Kuke, Finvera, and Finance have also reopened and often partner with MIGA or IFIs. In July 2025, 10 EU countries joined the InvestEU Export Credit Pilot, an AIF-backed guarantee program that supports SMEs exporting to Ukraine and reduces financial risks. Clearly, each country and agency will take a different position, and availability of finance will fluctuate depending on the usage of credit lines. However, the position is clear: Ukraine is open for business. In summary, there is no doubt that huge amounts of funding is needed, not just for the long term, but is also in the present. Significant pledges of funds and support have been made, but there have been delays in these funds being made available. This has resulted in an undeniable backlog of projects looking for financing. This is due in no small part by the lack of any funding from the USA and the need to find new sources to fill this gap. However, the good news is that funding lines do exist. There is still a good level of projects making their way through the pipeline. Significant increases in the level of funding is expected in the very near future. The fact that commercial lines of credit are available is extremely encouraging. Therefore, in conclusion, projects are there to be won now. Finance for these projects is available now. Early movers with higher risk appetites gain first mover advantages and access to extensive support networks. By getting involved now, perhaps in smaller projects, foreign companies have the opportunity to establish themselves to be ready when the really big projects come through, and that's not expected to be in the distant future. So there is the chance to get ahead of competitors who, for various reasons, delay in establishing a presence in the Ukrainian rebuild program. Thank you for watching this presentation. My name is Ilya Gzoim. You can see my email address here. If I can be of any further help, please do not hesitate to contact me. I'll say goodbye now and wish you all a very productive day at this forum. Thank you for attending.